The data has been absolutely clear for years now. Stocks with insider purchases tend to outperform the market over different periods of time. It doesn't matter if you're looking at it on a 14-day time period or a 360-day time period, insiders outperform the market. And we've recently seen two very popular stocks with insider buying, one that has heavily outperformed the market in 2025 and one that has way underperformed. So in this video, we're going to be analyzing both of them. But first, I'd like to say thank you to Dividend Wealth for sponsoring this video, who's currently running a holiday sale where you can actually get 50% off the lifetime or yearly plans. Dividend Wealth is designed to fix all your dividend tracking problems. Dividend Wealth shows you your expected annual income, exactly when those dividends will come in, and it gets even more specific when you use the dividend calendar. No more manual updates, no more guessing. I can easily see a snapshot of all the holdings in this example portfolio, how much it's going to pay me in dividend, and what the things like gains and yield look like on each of these individual positions. Now's the time to stop guessing and take advantage of the 50% off sale that's only going to be lasting for the next 14 days. You can check it out at the link in the description or the pinned comment. So let's go ahead and dive into it. And the very first stock on our list is none other than Nike. Nike has recently had one of the worst 5-year stretches in the company's entire history. It's down 56.89% in the last 5 years. And if we just look at the stock year to date, it's now down by about 19.33%. Now, we'll get into what's been going on, but let's take a dive into these insider purchases. Now, as we can see, when the stock spiked this summer, we started to see many insiders selling out of their positions. But with the recent dip, we have multiple insiders buying. And in fact, if we take a closer look, we can see Tim Cook and Robert Swan, both non-executive directors. Tim Cook added over 50,000 shares and Robert Swan around 8,700 shares for a total value of about $3.5 million. Now, there's a couple of things we have to make note. Investors have been making a big deal of Apple's Tim Cook buying the dip. This is Apple's CEO. And in fact, after he bought the stock, the company saw a slight rally. If we look at the 1-month chart, you can see right here is when that insider purchase was announced. So we saw a little bit of a spike. But what I don't see most media outlets reporting is the fact that this was a planned purchase. Essentially, this planned purchase means that Tim Cook already had a pre-arranged agreement to buy the stock on this date. So it's not like he simply saw an opportunity when the stock fell. That's certainly an important caveat to make. Now, let's actually dive into Nike. What's been going on with the stock? There's a lot we could point to, but let's start just by looking at some of the key fundamentals. And we'll start by jumping over to our profitability tab and looking at Nike. And right off the bat, we can start to see some potential issues. Let's start with top lines. If we look at revenue, we can see it looks like it peaked around 2023, 2024 at about $51.3 billion. In 2025, we actually saw Nike pull back in revenue for the first time, with the exception of 2020 in the last decade. Revenue was about $46.3 billion, so it declined by around 10% year over year from 2024 to 2025. A 10% revenue decline for a company of this stature is substantial. And this is one of the many reasons that we saw a large decline in earnings per share going from 376 all the way down to 217. But it wasn't just declining revenues that was part of the issue, it was declining margins. The gross profit ratio for Nike over the past decade has continued to decline. They started at about 46% in 2015 and in 2025 was sitting at 42.73%. So again, that plays a role in seeing the decline in EPS. Now, sometimes simply looking at EPS isn't the best way to judge the stock. It can be manipulated through accounting practices and potential one-time accounting adjustments. So a lot of the times we like to look at free cash flow. Maybe that tells a different story. Well, if we look at the dividend breakdown sheet, come down here and look at free cash flow, we can see 2024 free cash flow at about $6.6 billion, 2025 $3.2 billion. Okay, obviously a very difficult year, the lowest since 2020, but are they projected to jump back up? Was this a one-time thing? Well, if we look at where analysts are expecting to be with free cash flow moving forward, it actually doesn't get much prettier. 2026 free cash flow is projected to be lower than 2025. And in fact, by the year 2030, analysts are essentially projecting that they're still going to be below where they were in 2024. So the financials are absolutely very, very ugly. You can see why a stock like this has sold off around 18% in the last year, despite already seeing a significant sell-off in the last 5 years. So Nike is absolutely in the midst of a turnaround play. They're seeing very weak revenue growth. They're seeing margins decline. In fact, if we look at the free cash flow analysis sheet, They're seeing revenues decline. They're seeing margins decline as well. In fact, if we just glance at the free cash flow analysis sheet, look at how the free cash flow margins have changed over the last decade, continually going lower. Of course, they've also been hampered by things like tariffs, and especially weakness in China markets. And as a result of all this, Nike has brought on a new CEO, Elliott Hill. And Elliott Hill is calling his strategy the Win Now strategy. So yes, this is absolutely a turnaround play, and this is something that he acknowledges in the recent earnings report. He said Nike is in the middle innings of our comeback. We are making progress in the areas we prioritized first and remain confident in the actions we're taking to drive the long-term growth and profitability of our brands. And in a recent letter to his shareholder, he highlighted 5 different things that he thinks Nike needs to do to start winning now. Ignite our winning culture, shape our brand for distinction, accelerate our product portfolio, and then we have to elevate and grow the marketplace and win on the ground. What's interesting about this is really all 5 of these boil down to one thing: the company's brand. For the longest time, Nike's moat was the brand. And what we've learned is a brand moat is not typically a very strong moat. It's very susceptible to disruption over the years. And we've seen this again because we now see revenue declining and we see margins declining. Consumers are looking elsewhere for their needs. So with that being said, does that mean Nike is now an opportunity? Has the stock sold off too much in the last 5 years, being down around 57%? Now, here's what's interesting about Nike when it comes to valuation. Yes, the stock has sold off significantly in the last 5 years, but because we've seen such a drop in earnings in the last year or two, what does that mean? Well, it means despite the sell-off, the company is now trading at a higher price to earnings multiple than it typically has on average over the last 5 years. On a non-GAAP forward-looking basis, they're about 13% more expensive than they were on average over the last 5 years. Now, anytime we're looking at what is really a turnaround play, one of the better ways to value the stock is using a reverse discounted cash flow analysis. Typically, when valuing a more mature company, a lot of the times you'll use a DCF model, but future cash flows for a stock like Nike are so unpredictable, we want to see what the growth that is priced in from the market currently looks like for this stock. So, for example, if we assume 0% free cash flow growth for Nike, then the company would be worth around $28.11 per share, but they're currently trading at $61 a share. So, obviously, there's growth priced in. So, how much growth over the next decade does Nike need on average to get to a fair value of $61? Well, if we bump it up to 5%, we come to about $40 a share. If we bump it up to 8%, $50 a share. And if we bump it up to about 11%, we start to get very close to the current share price. So really around that 10.9, maybe even 10.8% range is how much free cash flow growth is priced into Nike right now. Now, what we're seeing based on analyst estimates, at least through the year 2030, is that might be a bit optimistic. Why is that the case? Well, because we see 2026 free cash flows are already projected to be substantially lower than in 2025. 2027 will just start to match up to the previous year, 2025. So yes, while it looks like some analysts believe in the turnaround play over the next 3 to 5 year time period, the next couple of years still look quite difficult. So there's certainly still a lot of uncertainty surrounding this stock. And turnaround plays can be dangerous. They can be very dangerous. Yes, there's absolutely opportunities when they can provide substantial returns. But for every turnaround play where I've seen a stock double, I can show you multiple where the stock has continued to fall further and further. So really it depends on what type of investor you consider yourself. If you're very aggressive, if you believe in Elliott Hill and Nike's management team to turn things around, maybe this is a potential opportunity to look at. For me, I prefer to make investing as simple and easy as possible. I love companies with predictable future cash flows, and I like to buy them at good valuations. As of right now, Nike does not meet that criteria. The next stock on our list is in a completely different position than Nike. It's been outperforming the market significantly over the last 5 years, up 715%, and this is a position that I actually own in my personal portfolio, and obviously it's done very well. It's Broadcom, stock ticker AVGO, and if we look at them year to date, they're up over 51%. But now if we look at them in the last month, they're down by about 9.73%. And this is a dip that one insider in particular has bought, as we can see listed out right here. Now, what's interesting about this is even though the stock is already up around 51% year to date, Wall Street still remains incredibly bullish on this stock. In fact, they have a 12-month price target of $455.63, giving them around 30% upside from current prices. Now, if you aren't familiar with Broadcom, I was actually writing about them over on Dividendology.com just the other day, and most people understand that they are a semiconductor company, but there's quite a bit more to them than just that. They have two core segments. Number one is semiconductor solutions. They basically design custom chips that are critical to hyperscale AI data centers, which is obviously a sector that's blown up in the last couple of years. And these are used by companies like Google, Meta, and Anthropic. But then on the other side, we have infrastructure software, which is around 39-40% of their revenue. And this segment includes things like VMware, mainframe softwares, and enterprise infrastructure tools that are deeply embedded in corporate IT stacks. And this is the business segment that has high margins and recurring revenue characteristics. So what a lot of people don't understand about Broadcom, especially after their recent acquisitions over the last few years, is that Broadcom has moved beyond just selling the physical building blocks of data centers and into controlling the brain that sits on top of that hardware. Another way of saying this is instead of only providing chips and networking equipment, Broadcom now owns the software that determines how computing workloads are deployed, managed, and optimized across an organization's infrastructure. So Broadcom is no longer just supplying the tools that power these data centers, but is also helping to control how those tools are used every day, which of course increases their customer dependence, switching cost, and long-term pricing power. They're building out their moat. They're building out their competitive advantages. So what we can see with Broadcom, if we jump over to our profitability sheet, look at how revenue has grown in the past decade, going from about $6.8 billion to in 2025, $63.8 billion. So nearly a 10x in a 10-year time period. But it's not just revenue that surged, it's margins. The gross profit ratio starting out in around 2015, even 2016, was in that 50% range, but last year's came in at 67.7%. So this is obviously a rapid growth company. And companies growing top lines while expanding margins are also the same companies able to grow their dividend at a substantial rate, a 10-year dividend CAGR of 25.38%. The yield is obviously low, so this is certainly a dividend growth stock. Now, obviously, the concern most people have is whether or not we're in an AI bubble. And if you pay close attention to the traditional media outlets, you'll probably see a lot of murmurings about how the AI bubble looks a lot like the dot-com bubble. Now, the point of this video is not to get into whether or not that's the case, but specifically as it relates to Broadcom, there is a major difference. During the dot-com bubble, we saw dot-com stocks trading at absurd valuations without the future cash flows to justify it. Broadcom is in a totally different scenario. Look at the future cash flow estimates for Broadcom. Free cash flow in 2025 was about $26 billion, $26.9 billion. And just 5 years later, it's projected to be about $107 billion. So we're talking about a 4x in just a 5-year time period. Now you might be thinking, okay, that might not be fair. We're just looking at estimates. Estimates can be incorrect. And I'm so glad you brought up this point. In Broadcom's recent earnings report just a few weeks ago, one of the things that they highlighted that I don't think enough people are talking about is the CEO reported our total order on hand in excess of $73 billion today, which is almost half Broadcom's consolidated backlog of $162 billion. We expect this $73 billion in AI backlog to be delivered over the next 18 months. So Broadcom already has $73 billion in orders. Now, we need to put this into perspective. So $73 billion in sales is expected to be recognized in the next 18 months. Now, to put this into perspective, look where they were in 2024. 2024 revenue was sitting at $51 billion. So their backlog is already 1.5 times higher than their 2024 revenue, and it's expected to be recognized in just the next 18 months. So this isn't a company trading at a valuation without the cash flows in the future to justify it. In fact, the cash flows, at least over the next 18 months, are extremely predictable. They already have the orders lined up. Now, the only similarity Broadcom has to Nike is really the fact that the best way to value it right now is, again, using a reverse discounted cash flow analysis. Why is this one of the better valuation models for this company? Well, the reality is a reverse DCF makes sense in two instances. One, if we're looking at a turnaround play, and number two, if we're looking at a hyper growth stock. And Nike and Broadcom both fall into those categories. Nike's a turnaround, Broadcom is hyper growth. So right now, Broadcom is trading at about $350 per share, and with 0% growth priced in, they'd be worth around $66 a share. Now, if we start bumping this up at 10%, they're worth $145. At 20%, worth about $300. If we bump it up to around 23%, we start getting closer, and we can see at about that 22.2% range, we get essentially the current share price for Broadcom. So over the next decade, there is substantial free cash flow growth priced into this stock. Now, here's what's actually really exciting about this projection. With this free cash flow growth rate projection, we can see by the year 2030, they'd be sitting at about $73 billion in free cash flow. But if we look at those analyst estimates over on ticker.com, we can see analysts are projecting about $107 billion in free cash flow by the year 2030. So while a free cash flow CAGR of about 22.2% over the next decade seems a bit ridiculous, they're actually underpriced, at least compared to what the future cash flow projections look like according to analyst estimates. Now, obviously, when you start projecting past 5, 6, or 7 years, it gets a little bit more murky, but this is a good sign overall. So when you see a stock like Broadcom trading at a forward PE of 34.83, yes, that's a high number. And when you see a stock that's already up around 42% in the last year, 50% year to date, you probably feel like you already missed the boat. But I'm not necessarily convinced that's the case with Broadcom. A company that's projected to 4x their free cash flows, trading at a PE multiple of just 34.83 actually sounds quite attractive in my opinion. So complete transparency like always, and I'll talk about this more in my portfolio update, but I've added a few more shares of Broadcom to my portfolio. So there you go, those are two stocks that recently saw insider buying. Go ahead and let me know what you think of these stocks in the comments down below, and like always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.